Welcome back, everybody, to Datum Gaming and another episode of The Roundtable. Today, we're going to do a video and a little podcasting about kind of the state of gaming. Some of the good things that have happened in the video game industry, some of the bad things that have happened, some of the things that are plaguing the industry, and some of the things that are a positive influence. We're going to start, as always, with introducing our lovely cohorts. We got Tim, aka Stutters, aka Timmy's Terabyte. How we doing tonight, Tim?
Good.
What game are we currently playing?
Still Honkai Star Rail, and
That's
and
going to be
some
the answer
Grounded
for
actually.
as long as this podcast goes.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when I don't mention that, it's gonna be a problem. But no, yeah, and then my son's really into Grounded, so we've been playing that a lot.
So we should just lead with Grounded every time. Just
Yeah. Let's go with that. That's the new favorite.
Stoner.
It's cool. It's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids that you actually get to play.
Okay.
So yeah, it's very cool.
Don't you get to play as like an ant or an insect, or are you always just a small person?
Yeah, you're always just a small person.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's cool.
Yeah, really neat.
Gotcha. And then joining us again, we also have Chris Lionheart, the OG.
How are you?
I'm doing good. What are we playing right now, Chris?
So I think I finally settled on something. I was playing Final Fantasy 3, but now I'm playing Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name.
Okay.
So this is that in between Like a Dragon and Infinite Wealth.
Mm-hmm. Is this the one that takes place in the past, where it's like a Western game? I think I saw.
No, this is the one that takes place I think it's as Like a Dragon's happening. It's before. It's how Kiryu gets to where he is in Like a Dragon.
Okay, so
Because you do see him. I don't know how far you've gotten, but you do see him for a little bit at the end.
No, I just got to. In my game, I just got to the cookie store where I am now playing Monopoly, and I have to keep this business from going bankrupt.
Oh yeah. Okay,
With
I like that part. Yeah.
the chicken, and
Yeah.
I figured I'm gonna have to kind of stream that off or do that offline because I don't know how engaging going through that would be on like in a video. Because it seems just like it's a pretty static screen where it's just like you interact with a couple of menus and then it just.
Yeah. But yeah, this thing just explains basically what happens to him between the couple games, and because I think if you just played Like a Dragon and Infinite Wealth, it probably because it does a thing of where it recaps, so it probably would show anyways.
Yeah, the king of exposition for sure.
But this is just like the full experience.
Okay. Maybe I'll have to go to that while I wait for Like a Wealth to pull its head out of its ass.
It's really good actually. I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Okay. As for me, I started a Darkest Dungeon run as requested by someone watching the videos on YouTube, and it has been rage-inducing. I'm still doing Yakuza, and I was playing around a little bit with 20 Minutes to Daylight, because it's kind of very adjacent to some of those other bullet hell, roguelite, RPG, esque games. And it's pretty fun. It's not as complex as some of the other ones, so I don't think I'll be playing it that much longer. Just because there's not a lot of extra things to do, so it gets extremely repetitive real quickly. But rolling into big notable news, we got a video here to watch. I guess this would be considered the biggest news to come out.
Magic is epic.
So we have two titans of industry coming together as Disney soonish. We don't have an ETA or a timeline or a business plan, but Disney has forked over $1.5 billion to invest heavily into Epic.
Crazy.
What are our thoughts?
My first thought is they have never clicked on the Epic launcher. They've never seen that thing.
Yeah.
I think.
But seriously, I don't know. Seriously, I don't know. Yeah.
I think this is a step to them taking control over all of the IPs they have that they've been farming out to different developers and studios and having a lot of mixed results with. There's no real quality control behind the level of games coming out. They've had a lot of really bad interactions with Battlefront, with the loot box controversy and the $22,000 Darth Vader skin.
Yeah, damn, I forgot about that, yeah.
Right, yeah.
So, it's been really hit or miss for them. I think this is kind of a step in the right direction for them to be the multimedia moguls they really are. But,
yeah, and Epic's kind of, relatively on, the,
I think Epic was struggling, to be honest. I think...
Yeah?
That's what I thought, too, yeah.
I don't think they were getting the market share they thought they were, or that they thought they deserved. And it's hard to compete with Steam or, PlayStation and Xbox. And for a while there, I thought they were just going to partner with Xbox, and Epic and Xbox were going to be kind of just synonymous. Your Epic account or your your Xbox Live account, or what is it called now? What is it? Play service. What did they change it to? The Game Pass Live.
For Microsoft?
Yeah, because it's not Xbox Live anymore. It's just
Xbox Game Pass Ultimate.
Yeah, so I figured they were just going to combine those two together.
Yeah.
But maybe Xbox wasn't in a position to really market share or heavily invest in something like that. So Disney kind of swooped in. But I think this is their way of stepping towards control over their own franchises, their own IPs and characters, because they own so many now at this point that are all billion-dollar franchises in their own right.
Right. And
farming them out probably is just not good for the brand.
Yeah, and Fortnite already kind of lends itself to be from outside IPs and stuff like that, so having more of a hand in it, I'm sure that they can release more IPs to them and let them use more assets.
Yeah, and I think they're going to have the ability to exert more control over how Epic allows games to be released on the platform, as to where if they were going to try to partner with Steam, Steam is essentially the Wild West. You can release anything on Steam, and to have any Disney related product sitting next to a full on hentai game, it's just never gonna Disney's never gonna let it happen, right? But I think Epic has a little bit of a stricter community guidelines standards for the games they're releasing, so I'm not upset by this move. I think it's actually good.
What about the central hub aspect? They're trying to go, 2K's got the hub, this has it, just that central location where people constantly go to, and then you just I
think that's just the way of the world now.
That's just that trend of just having a hub. A lot of games have that in different sizes, right? Mm-hmm. This is just one of the bigger ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's probably trying to grow a community, get people together to try to group and, have fun.
Yeah. My cat is joining us for the stream. Itchy.
I saw the door open slowly.
No, that's the ghost. This is definitely not my cat.
That's funny.
But yeah, so
you figure Fortnite already lends itself to a younger demographic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems like a perfect fit with Disney.
Yeah, I mean, they even have a little bit of a partnership with Call of Duty to some degree with their more mature products. So it's
Yeah.
it's just market share, and they're just expanding out. Will this mean we're going to get more Disney centric IPs? That's that's going to be the telling sign.
Right.
They tried it for a little
Well, yeah,
bit.
based on that video, it looks like they're going to build a a whole kind of Disney
universe,
themed,
the Mickeyverse, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
And I got no issues with that. I mean, I love Disney. I've always loved Disney.
Yeah.
Monopoly aside, like they make content that's enjoyable. Your family loves it. Now they own Pixar as well, so it's just like it's hard for me to be upset about this because it means there's a possibility of I want Mickey RPG, right? I want the Super Mario RPG version of Mickey Mouse, like where I get to have we had Kingdom Hearts, we got Donald and Sora. No, I want Mickey RPG where we're like going through all the different Disneylands.
Yeah.
And
remember when we thought those were big? Those collabs were big. Like, oh look, like Disney is pairing up with Square, right?
Yeah, no, I mean I thought that was
for a single game. Well, it became actually became like 500 games, but
yeah, at this point I think they're
what was that?
8 in the series.
But this is like.
Did you guys ever play Epic Mickey?
Oh, well, I was just going to say that they did partner with Nintendo for a little bit, and they released some Disney games. They did the toys where you would battle with them. I can't remember what it's called right now.
On mobile, or no? You're saying Nintendo?
No, Disney Infinite.
Yeah, Disney Infinite. Where you
that's
you
right.
put the little toy on it, and it would interact or it'd be more powerful.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
They've tried a lot of different things with different companies, but I don't think they've ever. This is just my assumptions. I don't think they've ever seen the success they think they should have for how big their brand is when they see something like Harry Potter come out and it sells 20 million units, right? And it's just massive success. And they're like, well, no Disney game's ever sold like that. And they have so much more history and storied, characters. It's crazy that there hasn't been a game that I can think of that has had that level of success for them, that hasn't had issues of quality, technicality when it comes to like how it was developed. It just always feels like there's something else kind of holding it back. So I think getting involved with Epic, hopefully that alleviates that, right? And then there's no excuse, right? Give me Mickey Assassin's Creed. At this point I don't care. Right?
Super Smash with Disney characters, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just not PlayStation All Stars because that game was.
No, not that.
Yeah.
All right. So that was some of the big news, and then we also had Ubisoft coming out today, or it was yesterday, late in the afternoon, defending Skull and Bones, which has been in development hell forever, has essentially lied to the consumers about what the game was going to be, what was the aspects of it were going to be, pretty much through video manipulation, commercialing. It's had a lot of issues, but they didn't double down; they quadrupled down. His tag was, "It's a quadruple A game. Pay the $70." That's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah.
On top of the fact that it's heavily inundated with premium currency through Ubisoft, which I forgot what they call it. I think it's Helix coins for Ubisoft or something like that.
Yeah,
coins.
something like that. Yeah. Yeah, I think you can use it through all the different games. I think.
Yeah, but so he's been pretty adamant that this game is not going to bomb. It's going to live up to everyone's expectations, which I don't know if that's possible. Because all anyone wanted was Assassin's Creed boat gameplay, right? They wanted pirates, they wanted to be able to raid each other's boats, and now that's been taken out of the game. So there's no... They just announced that you can go into port, but it seems like it's a very reduced section, and it was rushed to just appease backlash that came out. that everything else was taken out of the game. But
It's funny you mentioned that because while we were waiting, I went and downloaded the demo. So I saw it was available this weekend. So
yeah, and then open beta starts on the 16th, and that's kind of going to be the linchpin, because it's not a $60 game. It's just straight 70, or more depending on which version you're playing, right? But I thought that was funny. You know, I love to see a executive or a producer come out and just fully back their game, right?
Yeah.
But I just thought it was exceptionally funny that he would use a quadruple A game as if this game was it was going to be the game, right? The best thing that's ever been made.
right.
Because, I mean, if I was going to call something quadruple A, right, I would be, listing our favorite games or, something that just... not a game that's already mired in massive controversy and, 3 additional years of development, just cyclage in hell. So I just thought that was an interesting retrospective to see that at least he's going to defend his game. But is it a possibility that he's now set the expectation so impossibly high that even if it was just an okay game, because he has now come out promising that it's going to be not a AAA game, right? Not a premium price like product where you're not going to be upset with it, but it's a step above, right? Did he just guarantee its failure? Yeah, like I've never seen a company come out and say quadruple A. And then is it taken out of context? Was he saying it, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, or was he like 100% serious?
I would like to see the video if there is. Yeah.
I don't know.
This game, I just looked this up. It's been in It started development in 2013, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't know if it officially started developing or the conversation started.
Let's put it at 10 years.
After Black Flag came out, it was like everyone was like, okay, we need a game that's just this. Screw the crap Assassin's Creed that it's packaged with. I just want boats. I just want pirates.
That's just I feel like it's a rough list of games that have been in development for 10 years that are good.
Yeah.
I mean, name one off the top of your head that was in development that long that didn't have...
So off the top of my head, it's a rough list. 15, Duke Nukem Forever, 2 to come to mind.
Duke Nukem Forever.
Right?
I want to say that was like 20 years of
for a long time.
But yeah, so I thought that was a funny story. You're trying to sell your game, you're trying to make it sound good, but to call it a quadruple A game, and then to still have people kind of question you, and you're just like, come on, it's a good game, pay $70. It's just like
that's very No Man's Sky type.
Oh yeah, oh my god, I can't even remember that
flexing.
I can't remember that guy's name, and I think it's a little unfair because at least if I was going to compare No Man's Sky to the other like hot garbage, just dog water games that came out like that, No Man's Sky from launch to where it is now are two totally different games. Yeah, like he oversold, but I think he's trying to live up to the promise at least. As to where there's plenty of games that just came out, they were crap. They did not try and deliver on any promise they made.
Yeah.
All right, and then on top of that, this wasn't going to be about Square, but Square has come out with a little bit of an interesting perspective. Square essentially has told stockholders that they are going to have radical, not slight, they use the term radical, reform from top to bottom. The company feels like it is pretty much at a complete failure. They feel like Final Fantasy 16 is kind of dead on arrival. It sold 3 million copies, but I guess they were expecting 10 million out the gate. I don't know. but they've fallen flat. They've lost market shares. The only time the company has actually been profitable in the last 5 years, according to some of the reports I wrote, was the 7 remake release. We're going into Rebirth.
God, yeah, if that bombs, that's going to be big trouble or
and
big problem for them.
But on top of this, they haven't exactly said what they're going to do, but the word on the street is they're changing how they develop, the cycle in which they develop, and how the teams are structured for development. So that's a pretty big change from top to bottom, as well as they're apparently going to be cutting some IPs out. We haven't gotten the full overview of that. Square Enix does their own like Gamescom or CompanyCon, where they come out with a state of address, well-being for the company, for their shareholders and profiteers. So I think that'll be a pretty telling sign, because I believe that one takes place in March or April for them.
No more Star Oceans is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
But I did want to take a look at this. So this is how each series has sold and each game has sold. So if you look at the major series, obviously Final Fantasy is at the top, where as a series it sold 180 million. Dragon Quest would be number 2, followed by Kingdom Hearts.
Just cause, wow.
And then that one surprised me. And
there's four of those, I think, right?
Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah. The only other game that's on here that has had critical success would be Tomb Raider, but they don't have any part of that anymore, because they've completely released it to Eidos.
Octopath had success.
And Hitman. Well,
right, yeah, Octopath.
So if they're saying 3 million it's sold is not successful, pretty much every other game they've had barely even reaches that mark, right? Star Ocean as a series, there are 7 or 8 games in that, has only sold 4 million.
Oh, I get the numbers now. Okay, yeah.
Okay. So Octopath, there's 4 Octopath Travelers.
3 games. There's a mobile game and 2. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's 4 million. The Chocobo series, Parasite. So, you look at these games, and I love almost all of these games. This one surprised me, actually. The Saga series is at 10 million units sold.
Nier, I'd say Nier is a 10 million for that one's way newer than the other ones. So.
Yeah, well, but that was because it was Dragon Guard before, or like they consider.
Yeah, there was those. I mean, come on, those. Both Nier games are all of that number. But there was those games.
But so then I wanted to go into kind of look at how each game sold or broke down. Clearly, the most successful is 14, but that's because it's an MMO that's sold on every platform. MMOs, they just hit different, and they also count each expansion as an additional sell.
Look at number 3.
And then, number 3, you've got Final Fantasy VIII at 12 mil.
Yeah.
The staggering thing to me on this list is if you look at the years, right? If we go by years and units sold, it's a really telling sign to me that when you get to like 2010, the only game that really sells well or at a high rate is 14, if they were going to consider it, critical or successful. But even then, you have 13 that sold 10 million that released on every platform. You have Crisis Core that sold 4 million. That was on PSP. I think that's incredible, right, for a handheld game. And 12 was surprising to me. I thought it actually sold more, but it only sold 11 million units.
Yeah, that is interesting.
You see a real big trend. Nothing released after 2010 is on this list for Final Fantasy as a top sold game, right?
Yeah, I mean, the first video we did kind of explain that.
Right, yeah. And so if we go to it down and look at it, when does that trend start? Right around the turmoil with Sakaguchi, right around when the company really shifted their directive and how they were developing games and their cycles. And I think it's a real telling sign that all of the games that came out, they're all down here. They're all down in no man's land of obscurity, of just, they're kind of okay. And then when you look at revenue, right? I mean, this is where the only time where the other newer releases kind of feel like they shine, but that's just because they have a much higher price point. You know, $5 million at $60 a game, you know, looks a lot better than $8 million at $20 a game. And of course, you know, Space Invaders is the one.
Space Invaders.
Yeah, I wonder how they calculate that number.
Yeah. Arcade units sold. Just you know, it's probably just aggregated to be well. But the thing that I thought was cool here is they put 7 and the remake together, which is what pushed it so high because there's a huge portion of that $2 billion. What surprised me the most was how high 10 and 10-2 were.
Yeah.
I didn't think they would have pushed that high of sell value, but apparently they really did.
It's been released a couple times, so.
Yeah, that's the only thing I could think of is that because it got released HD.
PS3, PS3, PS4, PS Vita, right?
Yeah, and I feel like that's the big trend.
And typically, those. Well, yeah, and then the new Final Fantasy games on the new systems typically, like the first release, tend to do really well.
Yeah.
And then PC sales were kind of interesting to me. They just haven't hit the PC market. If it's not an MMO, it doesn't feel like they've had much success, which is why I think they just don't even attempt it.
Yeah, because it becomes like an afterthought. I know there's a lot of like a big draw for 7 Remake, to be released on PC, but I don't think it was released until like months after, or almost a year after.
A year? I think it was a year.
It was a pretty big time. But yeah, I mean, I was looking at the breakdown of all the games and how they came out, and I was just thinking about for SNES when it was, released, what huge numbers they were doing. If you think about it in the reality of like a comparison of where games were to now, like this is like 20 million units sold essentially now.
I wouldn't have guessed that would be number one.
Yeah, because you're thinking they got no marketing beyond Nintendo Power, Game Pro, or Electronic Magazine and all those. Like, it's not like we're seeing the influx of commercials and stuff. So, and then for PlayStation, I thought it was pretty interesting too that 8 almost sold as much as 7 on the original run. It was just a little bit off the mark.
But what people will say is just it was riding the wave of that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is true.
Some of it.
I mean that is just fact.
And then
I feel like that one got a lot more marketing than 7 did. Based on
big time. I mean, I bought it because of that the commercial. The commercial of Cypher and Squall fighting was so emotionally charged. And then the most surprising thing out of all my research is this one right here, is that there were 1.1 million people that bought Saga Frontier without knowing anything about the game, because anyone who knows anything about that game was not buying it.
No, come on, that one's... Alright, we're gonna have a Saga episode.
That's another one that I think was on the same demo disc as 7.
It might have been.
I think it had Saga Frontier and the 7 demo.
Unlimited Saga is a game, but Saga Frontier is a good game.
Yeah.
Alright, but that's pretty much...
Sidebar though, if you have the ways and means, get Harvestella.
I heard about that, yeah.
Yeah, it's very good.
But that's it for the big gaming news. There's a couple other stories that came out. Blizzard fired 1,800 people.
Oh yeah, the big purge. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people were up in arms in that. And for me, we don't know the full story, and I don't know if we ever will. But the effects of Bobby in that universe, I think we're never going to know the truth anymore. Is it possible?
I think there's a book being published, isn't there?
I hope so, and I'll read it. I hope there's a movie getting made. And they need
Jason Schreier's Play Nice.
Yeah, they need to teach classes about this guy and how he was able to suppress so many people from ever really telling the truth while being just a complete slime ball.
Yeah.
Because the stories of what was happening in that company are insane. Just so much inappropriate, just sexual harassment, physical harassment. Like, God, to think that what used to be considered like one of the greatest companies ever, that was the environment those people were working in, that's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Especially, for it when it was taking place, because aren't we supposed to be more civilized and woke at this point to frat boys running around, grabbing women's asses and stuff, like getting drunk in the office and throwing, condoms and dildos at people? Like, really? This was happening in 2016? Like, come on. Like, what the?
Yeah.
This isn't the 80s when everyone's all coked up, like in Wolf of Wall Street. And I just keep having this invasive thought process.
On the top floor of the big building.
Yeah, it's just Bobby watched The Wolf of Wall Street and was like, that's my life. This needs to be my life.
Us.
We need to be throwing, dwarfs into Velcro.
Kegers.
I'm just like, well, what is going on? This is like a movie that's supposed to be over dramatized, but it was real because these people had infinite, money and, influence and power. And then, all of a sudden, why is this in a video game industry? Well, because Bobby Kotick allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
So we have 1,800 people that lose their jobs. A ton of them are from Blizzard. And we were removing redundancy. We were, we don't know I don't know if the full list has come out yet of everyone who's been released, because there's a lot of really strong NDAs out there. So people can't really talk about it, and I think, that's in their best interest, because if people start talking, who knows what's going to come out. But maybe they were like, what was your association with Bobby? Is your name come up on any of these files? Because if it does, you're gone. And good. Get rid of all those people. None of them should have had their job. So maybe this is the best. I know it probably sucks for a lot of people because they probably really did lose their jobs, and they shouldn't have, or they just got caught in the crossfire. But at some point when you have that level of cancer, you gotta lose. You gotta cut it out. You gotta do whatever you can to just get away from what was happening. So, will this?
Yes, the whole mentality.
Yeah, will this be a good impact? Will it be a bad impact? We don't know yet. But at this point, it's gonna take time. Yeah, the state of Blizzard, it was just chaos and disarray already. So it's who knows? It could be worse. It could be better.
I have one question real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because you guys probably know better than me, but because this stuff came out before Diablo 4 came out, but how did that game sell? How did that affect that sales for that, you think?
I think it hurt it, but not as badly as it probably should have.
Right.
which is going to be one of the points I kind of bring up, is consumer blindness.
Don't
you think that will,
especially for how long the production was?
that will shape a little bit of what they do going forward, right?
But the state of Diablo post-launch, I think, is the biggest sign of it. No one was willing to give it a chance, or no one was willing to just let it exist as it was and continue playing. To have a game that sold that well, that went down to a concurrent player count of 1,000 players, is staggering. Considering who made it, the content,
the history,
the history of Diablo, to have that game fail that drastically, is frightening to say the least.
And what was the production time on that?
8 years, maybe.
At least.
And that's the kind of the thing with Blizzard, though. You never really know, because it feels like they keep games in production on the back burner for a really long time until they finally get greenlit. So it's like, what's the real production or development cycle once it gets to that stage? Because Blizzard's definitely a tinkerer, where they have an idea and they'll like do the loose or like base development of it to see if it kind of plays or if people are enjoying it before they kind of go full force on it, which I think is a good thing. But again, I think one of the games that did get hit, where their whole team got lost, was it was in development, and people said that it was really fun, but again, if there's no future for it, they're already struggling to make Diablo successful. Hearthstone's losing players, WoW's losing players. It's just, they have to stop hemorrhaging somewhere. And how that company was operating was insanity. How you can have 3 different companies working on the same game at the same exact moment that have no interaction between each other. How in the hell could you ever have expected that to be successful?
Right. Yeah, it's bizarre practice,
And they're not even in the same. It's not even like they were just separated by floor 1, 2, 3. I'm talking about different countries. You had Canada, you had East Coast, you had West Coast. They had no oversight. They had no communal anything, and it was just and
nobody's on the same page.
Yeah, and then on top of that, the biggest issue with Diablo, and I think that it will always plague Diablo 4, is 90% of the staff that programmed it does not work at the company anymore. They either fired them or they left because of the hostile work environment and the things that were happening. So no one knows how to code the game. They're just coding on top of code, and it's causing insane interactions where things are breaking, and every time they try and do one thing, they break 10 more, and it's not a good state. And it's not it's almost like they should just take a team, reprogram the whole game in a code that they know they can use for the next 10 years. It would almost potentially be smarter for them to do that than how they're doing it. Because the fact that they don't even know how the inventory can be managed on a global scale, because the guy who coded it doesn't work there anymore and won't give them his source code, which he shouldn't be, after how he was treated, is staggering. What do you mean you can't add one more stash?
You figure they've got to be forced to kind of build on top of, they're already assets, so it's it'd probably be 10 times the work to try to unravel all that and build it from scratch. So.
And I think that's what we were getting to. And when you had 3 different teams coding in 3 different ways and not communicating, it's just... Blizzard's in a place where I don't think any company wants to be, which is why, and to be held hostage by that asshole for years because they couldn't fire him, because if they fired him, they were going to owe him more money than if they, let him get severance out. It's a terrible position to be in, because you're held hostage by your fans, you're held hostage by your history, and then ultimately you're held hostage by one man who had terrible intentions and didn't care about the people that were working for him or the product.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, because Blizzard was up there with one of my favorite gaming companies.
Yeah, you guys grew up D2.
Right, yeah, yeah.
I mean, the first Blizzard game I ever played was Lost Vikings, I think.
Oh, shit, okay.
Or maybe it was Rock and Roll Racing.
Yeah, Rock and Roll Racing, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean,
when they were Interplay.
Yeah, that's going way back.
Yeah.
But that's it for gaming news. We're going to move into the actual purpose of this video. Anyone want to go first? Anyone feel like they want to jump in with their...
Yeah, I can go first.
Okay.
So I'll start with my, you know, because I had a positive and a negative on what I think is impacting gaming nowadays, and I'll start with the positive. And I think one of the positive things going on now is kind of the more emergence and more affordability, hopefully, of VR gaming, and just of how all the different avenues that it opens, and you know, with playing or with the play style, and just all these new kind of IPs and kind of indie titles that kind of get a chance to shine.
Yeah.
I've had a chance to play both using the MetaQuest 2 and as well as the PlayStation 5 VR. And I keep finding myself coming back to all the different, you know, kind of startup games that aren't really well-known publishers and things like that, and kind of getting a chance to play those, like some of them off the top of my head, like what is it? Shoot, no, I can't think of it. But it's on the MetaQuest, and its gameplay is similar to PUBG, where it's a Population 1. Okay, as soon as I talk about it, I thought of it. So it's yeah, very similar to PUBG and kind of Warzone, where you know you land in a open environment and have to kind of find items and resources as you go, find guns, and the map shrinks, you know, over the course of the game, and I think it's 100 people maybe, and but it's just cool, you know, it's like playing PUBG, but actually getting to, you know, kind of look around the environment and control your character and kind of lean and hide behind objects and, you know, reload your gun like you would reload a gun, and I just like the interactivity of it. It's kind of reignited my passion for games and stuff like that. Just with getting to try different like different genres and different IPs, and I really hope that it becomes more affordable as it goes, and like I already think that the MetaQuest 2 is a pretty good entry level, because now that the 3's out, I would assume that the 2 is probably more affordable now for people to kind of get their feet wet as far as, you know, wanting to jump in and really give it a try.
Okay.
Yeah, because a lot of the games that you can play on the newest one, the new PSVR 2, you know, are still playable on the MetaQuest, and no, it's just it's a very cool thing that's finally kind of going mainstream. I feel, where you don't need to. I know back when it was first kind of going to the public, you know, you needed like a whole setup where you needed, you know, cameras to be, or not cameras, but like a camera set up to kind of you know, be focused on you, and it took like a wider open area that you would have to have. But now I think it's more kind of self-contained and more accessible to the general public, and it's definitely been really cool. Yeah, my son really likes a lot of the games. There's a game he plays a lot called Gorilla Tag, and yeah, you spawn in as these little gorillas, and it's just a simple, you know, running around tagging other players, but it's surprisingly deep, and like the stuff that you can do, and like, you know, jump around and climb and swing on things, and it's really neat. And I mean, there's the physical aspect of it, you know, kind of gets you up off the couch and, you know, moving around and really getting to kind of explore and yeah, just get more, you know, involved in the game. Like actually in that video, yeah, that's a game that I think is either out or coming out soon. It looks really interesting, and I'd like to kind of try it once it comes out.
Yeah.
doing some flashy stuff with like ducking things, and it's cool. It's a very cool concept, and I'm glad that people get a chance to kind of try it. So yeah, I like that. Hopefully the gaming industry it starts to shine and flourish, and maybe some bigger IPs start supporting it, and we actually get maybe like a really good, maybe massively multiplayer online game out of it that would be more accessible and right, yeah, exactly. So yeah, that would be just massive, just to be able to kind of see other people's kind of virtual avatar, walking around, adventuring, like thinking back to 20, 40 person raids from World of Warcraft back in the day, and or EverQuest, just seeing other people, all working together like that would be just crazy. So yeah, that's one of the positive things that I hope can kind of keep going on the uptrend, and hopefully catch like I said, get a lot of good IPs and make some really engaging content, and hopefully that continues to flourish.
Any thoughts on that, Chris?
As far as you guys have any? Have you had a chance to kind of play any or try any kind of VR thing?
I guess my thoughts are, I honestly haven't seen any signs that VR is going mainstream. I hope it does, but I still think hasn't taken off, or doesn't look like it's taking off. I think it needs some kind of killer app. It needs some kind of just like.
I think it needs accessibility.
Yeah.
I think the price point is still too staggering of an investment, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's one of the bigger things. I think it's kind of holding it back, is it is kind of a niche thing, and that's another thing too, is there's not a lot of. There are a lot of indie titles, but like I said, there's not a lot of kind of, maybe familiar is not the right word, just to kind of things to kind of bring people in and really want to give it a try, and kind of boost the sale of it.
Yeah, it needs something multiplayer based, I think. I think VR Chat is the most popular VR game, probably, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah.
Downloaded.
Mm-hmm. That might change here in a second, because there is a game coming out, which I'm actually going to put up for you guys to watch. I don't know if you've seen it. But it also brings another question to mind. So I don't know if you've seen footage of this ever, but this is the #1 anticipated VR game in production that we are aware of. It's called Body Cam, and it is a hyper-realistic first-person shooter that you play in VR. They blur out the faces because there's currently a lot of controversy on whether or not this is potentially too far.
Wow.
But it's played at 60 or 120 frames. It's beyond hyper-realistic. It's you're literally living in these moments.
That's like Unreal Engine 5 type stuff.
It is on the newest Unreal Engine. The ray tracing, the lighting, everything in it is incredible. It's a little bit funky on how you control it, but the head movement wise, like everything you're doing is incredible. And then they've packaged it, the best way they can, which is Call of Duty / first-person shooter, which has the highest market share for games. Yeah. So this is kind of, if this is really, really good, and they get a nice little competitive market. But you see, it shows the potential of what a horror game could be. Apparently, everyone who's been playing testing it is an experience unlike anything they've ever had. The audio in it is incredible. The level of detail of everything, but more importantly, it's visceral. Is the most common thing being said about it. Is it makes you feel like you're pulling the trigger, which is why it's also got the controversy behind it. Is this training people how to kill, right? Is this creating...
Right, yeah.
Is this too far into... There's the disengagement of, if I'm playing Counter-Strike, I know it's a video game, right? But if I'm standing there and I'm physically pointing a gun even if it's just the joysticks or if it's just the the wands to manipulate the environment. But if I'm taking the action, does it make it more real? Does it make it too real? Does it have, we're living in a world where it was today or yesterday, there was another school shooting. We just had a bunch of kids, get killed. And is this a product of video games? Is this a product of our community, our environments? But is this a situation where is this potentially something that is going to be used, like the terrorists in 9/11 supposedly played Microsoft Flight Sim and they learned how to fly planes.
Right, I was just going to compare it to that.
Yeah, it was that realistic. We've had a lot of cultural moments in video games where boundaries continuously get pushed. Is this potentially the next big one? Mortal Kombat and Blood. And then now we have body cam and what is being described as the closest feel you can get to being in a first-person shooter, The way the gun looks, the way you hold it.
Yeah, it's the unfortunate,
And then what's the next iteration of this? It's Night Stalker. It's you play as the serial killer. You're stalking people around and you're killing, imagine if you were playing, Dead by Daylight in this type of setting. It would be so much different. It would be so much more fun.
Right, yeah.
Because you're playing hide and go seek with real people in, in interactable environments. But it also, there's going to be people out there that say it's teaching people how to become serial killers.
Yeah.
So as much as I am all for VR, I'm all for the next step in video games and for, media entertainment, because I can see the massive benefits of therapy in VR, right? Could you imagine the benefits for, PTSD in soldiers to be able to allow them to safely interact with their fears or their triggers in an environment where they can be, controlled?
Controlled environment.
Yeah, that's a good one, yeah.
Children dealing with, trauma in their life, having a video game that they can interact with. I think there's a ton of other applications besides just video games that VR can eventually lead us to. But of course,
helping deal with anxiety and things like that.
Positive and negative. Does this video seem like it could be translatable to a kid picking up a gun and using it? I couldn't argue no.
I know, right? Yeah.
I couldn't make.
It's like the unfortunate, dark side of.
Yeah, I couldn't make a rational argument that this would not, to some degree, perhaps give an unfair understanding to a child to how to use a gun that they wouldn't normally have. But again, movies are no different.
Right, yeah.
Playing Grand Theft Autos, it's always a slippery slope, and it's always going to be a topic for conversation. But I just thought it was interesting that I watched this and how people were describing it. That when you said VR was going to be your thing, because I wasn't going to mention this. I thought it was on my list that I might bring it up. But that's cool that this is what you wanted to talk about, was VR, so that I could actually show this as well.
I think.
Yeah. No, it's.
Really... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, kind of that's. We all wanted to kind of, go in a direction that benefits everybody, and is positive, it's seen in a positive light. But then, of course, with everything, there's always the dark side of it, and hopefully that doesn't, kind of take prevalence. So, it's incredible how lifelike they're getting with it. But
oh yeah, the sound design of this
like
game is insane.
Right, yeah. No, and I would expect that, based on the how more how real the graphics and stuff are getting lately with games and stuff like that. Even non VR stuff is getting pretty incredible.
And the capabilities of
right, yeah, exactly,
the
yeah,
engine.
and with the capabilities of it, yeah. But, yeah, what were we gonna say, Chris?
Just that I think Adam nailed it. Where when I meant killer app, I meant like some kind of experience that you don't have with a game, because it has to be something different. It has to be something like as much fun as you have with the VR headset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that you can't experience anywhere else. Kind of thing.
The conversation is like as much fun as I'm having with this, I can have equal to maybe a little bit less fun, but I don't have to have something on my head, and I don't have to have these things that are just kind of like
go paintballing
in the way.
Right.
Yeah. And so it has to really truly be like
a one of a kind.
What you felt when you played MMOs in the late 90s and 2000s, or some kind of thing that's just invoke something different than what you've experienced.
I mean, when they make Call of Duty
transformative
VR translatable, it's over. Like, the world ends. If I can have a 8-year-old kid G90 me in VR, that's when that's when society shuts down. But we also have news that I don't know if the company has been chosen, but Ready Player One is in development as a VR atmosphere.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know if that's maybe what's pushing Disney into Epic.
Possibly.
It's in the back of my mind because a lot of Disney's IPs are a part of Ready Player One. Steven Spielberg is a huge proponent of Disney's history. I don't know if Steven's going to be involved in it at all. I don't know if Kussler is involved in it at all, the writer of Ready Player One. But I mean, you have Sword Art Online, you have Ready Player One. If either of those games have any level of success that they can be interchangeable, look out. The VR market is going to explode. And then the monetization, like, we're going to live Ready Player One. I'm excited for it. I'm not excited that I won't be able to afford it, but if you've read Ready Player One, I'm going to be that dude that goes into debt and is just a slave to the system, so that I can play. I can play WoW in VR with you guys.
In VR, yeah.
I'm going to work
that be the way it is.
Support for 18 hours to play for 4. But all right, Chris, how about one of yours?
Slave to the system.
Yeah, literal slave to the system.
So I had 2. Okay, so I had 2 points. I guess I'll do one, and then we go switch back.
Yeah, we'll just go around.
Let's see. I'll go with. I try to do I guess I'll say like it's a positive and negative, and then have like a bigger picture thing, which
Okay.
I'll save for that one after I bring up the 2 points.
Okay.
Point number 1 about the industry and the state of the industry that I find interesting is how well you can still do in this industry being like an independent person. I think about movies and music and just the barrier for entry. I think it's the highest in movies. I think you have to play with the big guys to get something out on the theater or onto Netflix or onto things like that. I'm not totally sure, but I'd say out of those 3,
there's a lot of gatekeeping in the
I use the word gatekeeping.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of gatekeeping in movies. There was a ton of gatekeeping in music, but that's kind of broken down in recent times.
Yeah, Spotify and YouTube, I think, have really opened up an indie market for music.
But video games, they've I'm sure they tried to gatekeep, but it's just been you've been able to make games like a Vampire Survivor or these other games that are just small developer, and then the way we accept, I guess, games is what helps. Like I think maybe a low budget movie people are not as willing to accept as a low budget game, just because there's a lot more of artistic like flexibility
Yeah.
on like what we accept as good or not.
I love a low budget movie. I mean, that's you know me.
Yeah,
We used to
I know,
watch.
but I'm just
It's a special kind of movie when it sucks.
it can be, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're there, but
it really hits close to home. Yeah.
Yeah.
and they're that's why wasn't sure if I know exactly what I'm saying, because there is a lot of bad movies, right, that you can find.
Well, I think there's a
like,
lot of bad games that are also
There's like-
have like hidden gems, and they have aspects of them that are good that then get stolen by the bigger companies, right? I think it would be an interesting video to watch, or an interesting article to read, where someone really kind of devolved the video game industry to its like basis platforms, to see what was the first really crap game that came out that then turned into like Assassin's Creed, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was the first one that came out that turned into, Mega Man? What was the first one that turned into Super Mario, right? Because we just have tropes now, I think, is what video games have just been developed into commercialized tropes for how they get developed or how they get perceived. But to really break it down, like Duke Nukem, if you take it for its base, like, is that the first version, or is Serious Sam the first one? Where it's just comical, like, over the top ridiculousness. Or is there another game that does that, right? What was the first, you had you have Pitfall, right? Pitfall is the first, like, kind of action-adventure platformer, right? Then if you go to RPGs, right, you go all the way back to the text-based, choice games. Like you have Mythic Sword and Quest and Goblin Hags.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, and then you have Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
So it's like, to that aspect, I think indie games have always existed, but to the critical success is like Jelly Roll making a song, putting it on YouTube, and now he's like all over the internet. He's just like dominant. Like Bieber making a song when he was 8 years old, and then getting discovered by like I don't know. There's no movie.
Was that Usher?
No industry. Yeah, it was Usher.
Who?
Yeah, it was Usher. I think
Yeah, it
you're
was
right.
Usher. Yeah. And P Diddy, I think he ended up working with really closely too, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
a lot of those was like just kind of right place, right time.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to what you're saying. It's just a balance of virtues. Maybe not so much right or wrong. The virtue. You have freedom of expression, and then you also have quote unquote protecting people from things, right? And I've always leaned more towards just exposing people to more things, so they become more open-minded and hopefully mature. That's always just if you have an art gallery and it has grotesque things, that is what it is, and there's just going to be different things. And so I think the state of gaming is
Never
still
been so open.
Yeah, I think it's been resistance to censorship has been I'll use the word impressive.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people are willing to kind of skirt that line.
But
There definitely is
we're now
censorship,
starting
and
to
that's
see it more and more now.
we are starting to see it, but I think we're starting to see it like with the quadruple A people, I guess we'll call them, right?
Yeah, right. The quadruple.
Yeah.
But if you you can, it seems like you can, if you make a pretty decent product, you can do your own thing and make money. You're not going to make as much as Blizzard, but you can find a market for yourself, and you don't have to be begging on your knees with a movie script to be like, please help me, and then and change it, right?
Yeah.
I just my feeling.
I mean, you could definitely release a game by yourself, right? If you knew how to do it, or you had the capabilities of doing it, you could release it onto Steam and then potentially find an audience for it.
I mean, look at Power World.
Yeah, well, that's a little bit different because that's a company that has a different objective.
How about Chained Echoes? I don't know if you guys played that
Chained Echoes.
or heard about this game. RPG came out, I think, maybe a year or two ago.
It sounds familiar. Is that the one that 16 stole all their combat from?
I don't know about that. It was a guy. It was like a single guy that worked on it, and he had a composer.
It's an action RPG, right?
It's a turn-based game.
Oh, okay. Then.
Very few people worked on it. This guy worked. It was like a life project for him. He worked on it for a very long time. He released it. It's done. I think it's done pretty well. I think it should have done better, but just no marketing, nothing really for it. It's on. It was on Game Pass, which I thought was impressive for someone like him to get on Game Pass. I don't know if it's still on there, but.
German developer.
So this guy, for just someone like me or you to create a game and get on Game Pass, I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's impressive. Came out in 2024.
Yeah, sometimes all it takes is just
It looks like Secret of Mana is
a fan-driven.
Really
Right.
good.
Yeah.
I'd
It's
recommend
just
you
somebody
guys
that
play
wants
it,
to
yeah.
kind of harken back to those classics.
Well, sometimes I think we're starting to figure out that sometimes simpler is better, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. When you kind of go back to the roots.
Ultra complexity. Sometimes a simple system, a simple
exactly.
concept is all we really need. And I
Right.
guess Pal World would probably be the best example of that. They didn't reinvent the wheel. How much of what they stole. And I think stole is not really the right word. How much they
Expanded upon.
yeah, let's go let's go with that. Expanded upon, or in reference to, or in honor of, or...
In honor, there we
Right.
go.
Yeah. In honor of. Yeah. In this
like
the
that
spiritual
one.
successor. Yeah.
I don't know how much Pokemon's gonna agree with that, but
I know, right?
I mean, it.
Well, I mean,
it is
maybe
unique
that's
in a lot of
what
ways.
Pokemon needed. Is they needed Pal World to come out and be like, hey, look, these guys came out and did it with the production that they had.
I mean, in other games, stole that formula, right? Monster, you
right?
Catch
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Like, it's not like it's they're the first.
Yeah,
ones.
it's just
They're the first ones that have succeeded in creating something that challenges the crown.
Yeah. Right.
You
Yeah.
guys
Exactly. If anything, they're going to drive innovation. So then now maybe Pokemon's next game is going to be like Power World, but 10 times better.
It's not going to
Yeah.
be
Exactly.
It's not going to be Pokemon indiscriminate color with the same exact everything and basic story.
Right. Yeah. So people will have a game that they love with on an IP that they love. So I mean, maybe if anything,
that's perfect.
Looking at it glass half full, if maybe this drives Pokemon's passion to be like, hey,
Yeah. Well,
now we should make a game that's.
I'm just going to take over from there because that actually leads into one of my points. Is my feeling about the video game industry right now is they are trying to stifle Chris's point. I feel like there's a lot of attempts to stop creativity on the bigger company side or the bigger producing publishing sides because they don't want that level of diversity because it challenges their derivation.
Bottom line.
Yeah, and I think there's too many titles coming out that don't have diversity or they don't have evolution to them. I love Pokemon. I will play every single Pokemon game. They're fun. They're time sinks. I love catching my favorite ones, but they're so derivative of each other that they blend together at times.
Right.
Detective Pikachu was the first Pokemon game where I was like, holy shit, they can tell a story? Like, there's other things going on? And then that turns out that's just because it was like a manga beforehand that got adapted. Like, every Assassin's Creed like since 2 is literally the same game. You just transpose what culture you put it into, and it's boring as hell. And the story is just like, okay. The characters, there's just a version of them in the new one, whether it's in Egypt or it's in the Mesopotamian or it's in ancient Greece. Like you take
what other historical culture could be?
Right. So the next one that's going to come out is going to be caveman. Oh wait, no, Assassin's Creed did that. So it's just like, and why do companies feel like IPs need to be so similar, or why they feel like they found a formula so they just have to continue to copy it, or why they feel like that formula, because it worked for one game, should just work for every other game?
That's what I think it is. It's just they found something that works and makes money, and it's like, if it's ain't broke, don't fix it. So
you get less chances now, right? It's so expensive that you can't swing and miss. You don't get 3 strikes anymore.
Yeah, on top of that.
Were you ever getting
exactly right? Yeah, so it's like, let's go with the safe.
It's a good question. Yeah, were you ever getting 3 strikes?
Yeah. It's because it's financially safe, I feel.
But is it though? If you get lost
to use that as a building block, like as like the framework of the game. Let's go with what worked and made us money,
and then
in the first place, and then let's.
That's a company that they take the same exact product and they repackaged it 36 times until it finally hit. This was the first one that they have had that has a big hit, but it's also the first one that wasn't a mobile reskin, where you just take the gacha system with main character reskins until one just is successful. Which I think that's a terrible state for us to be in, because it stifles creativity. I think it floods the market with just an overabundance of crap that makes it harder to have real change in the industry, which will lead to my other point for later on, because it just creates just a huge miasma. Just there's so much of a single source product that it just becomes too hard to regulate, because there's just too much and there's too many things, or there's too many distractors. And then you can create a false positive where you just make one be ultra negative so that everyone focuses on that, and they just step away from the bigger picture, which I think is another thing that the industry is having a bigger issue is the focus is so easily shifted in the wrong direction.
You're just talking about the big money.
Yeah, I'm talking about the big money. Not the small guys. The small guys are always going to be doing their own thing. But at the same token, the small guys are also starting to fall into those same business practices where if we just steal 1% of that big picture, we're set for life.
Okay.
And I think that's what's caused a whole new set of issues for games that has caused a lot of fatigue for a lot of gamers in different areas.
Early access.
Yeah, early access,
right.
MOBA games, MMOs. The flooding of those markets has destroyed each of those genres heavily.
It kind of leads into my negative.
Okay.
Or one of my negatives, but it's just.
Yeah, I'll just say every year I find plenty of games to play, and I have like a specific taste of games.
Oh yeah.
And I always find stuff to play.
I think that's the beauty of it. There's so much diversity sometimes.
Well, that was my viewpoint of the resistance to of still creativity being there. But you have to find it, you have to search for it, and they're not making as much as games when there was just Super Nintendo and PlayStation, because they're on the Steam store and they just come out.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's why I think indies has made a big resurgence, because I think a lot of gamers are kind of fed up with how gaming's going nowadays, and that's kind of like they found solace in that, in going back to the small developer and really digging deep and going back to what interest got you interested in gaming in the first place, and then trying to find those like-minded indie developers, find those indie games that kind of draw you.
I think that's why remakes or remasters are also doing so much more successful than they were in the past.
Right.
Because going back to play a game in your past where you don't have to deal with all the new crap is better. And every time a remake has failed is when they try to insert any of those new ideologies into it, and they just, it's just poisoning the well.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Perpetuating the negativity.
All right. What is your negative, Tim, for the industry right now?
Yeah, I just feel that, the whole mentality of games as a service is just really bringing down, the gaming as a whole, as far as trying to build a game with, live service aspects and expect it to do well, has just historically not panned out for a lot of games. Examples come to mind of like Anthem, coming from EA, and being touted as this,
not EA,
BioWare. BioWare. Yeah, sorry, not EA, BioWare, and being hyped up as this, huge IP, brand new,
It was hype,
and it just fallen flat. And then
crash and burn,
crash and burn, and then the shareholders just kind of pull away immediately as soon as they see sales kind of go in the tubes. So it's just unfortunate that that's a lot of big game developers and game companies have kind of adopted that kind of mentality, where it's like, we're gonna market a game that's gonna have constant updates, and is going to string people along with, your, pick your poison, your battle pass that nobody likes.
Yeah.
Your microtransactions, which is a huge, point of contention with a lot of people with, with skins and things like that. Like, all people want, I think, is just to be able to buy a game and, feel like you own it and feel like it's a finished product, and that there's an end. You don't have to like I said, like, they're dangling the carrot in front of you, kind of leading you along, saying, "Oh, just we'll keep giving you content as long as you keep giving us money."
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just.
You guys don't, because I like games that end, but I feel like you guys kind of like games more that don't end. Like, you guys are okay with continuous content, kind of Diablo-esque MMO kind of games. They don't end, but I like single player, like RPGs that do end.
There's two aspects. I love a game that ends.
Yeah.
And ends well.
Yeah,
right.
And as long as they lay out the ground rule, like the what's the word, like the monetization aspect of it up front. Like, hey, it's going to be, $60-$70 from the get, and we're either going to charge you, a monthly fee, but then we're gonna give you these monthly or weekly updates, and as long as they can deliver on those and stay consistent, and they show that they are still supporting the game and can still keep the IP moving, then I think that kind of I would be more inclined to trust that kind of business practice. But a lot of these games I feel are hyped up a lot out of the gate, and we're promised these grand big
roadmap
kind of. Right, they lay out a huge roadmap. Yeah, exactly. And then it sucks because I feel like it almost incentivizes them not to kind of deliver on the launch part of it, and then just where I was in, where they kind of string you along, so you don't feel like you have a complete, cohesive, like playable game from the outset. Like they don't really have to focus on the launch per se. It's more about just the how much drip content they can give the consumer to kind of string them along.
Well, it's
And I feel like
definitely
there's more
created
emphasis on that.
that aspect of beta release where you don't even have to release a workable game. You can just,
Right.
because it's considered a live service and you're constantly working towards a goal of like changing it, you always have that out where, oh well, it's live, right? We'll just update it. Like,
Right.
you bought
And then
into
there's
it
always
with that understanding that it may not be a finished product.
right. And then down the line, say it isn't selling, according to whatever margin that they needed to hit with their excuse me, with their shareholders or whatnot, and then for them to essentially pull the plug on it is, I just don't think that's fair to to do their player base. And it just sucks that that's become like one of the aspects of gaming where a lot of these companies are just hyping these games to be a serviceable kind of experience, and it's just not. It's not. More often than not, it doesn't deliver on a lot of their promises. Fallout 76, to name another one. Star Wars Battlefront 2 with the microtransactions. Destiny 2, has a lot of their has had a lot of their expansions kind of been brought in. So it just seems like more often than not, it's 80-20, 80 not so good, and then there's few that have actually managed to kind of stay consistent and have been able to kind of deliver.
What aspect of live service do you find the most damaging? Is it Game Pass? Is it monthly subscription? Is it unfinished product or future DLC?
I would say that the premise of it is selling. It's more profitable to sell hope or sell like
right. Like a battle pass,
the what if instead of the what is.
Yeah.
Because I just think it breeds an unhealthy thing where you kind of are driven to, you're forced to fork over the $70 to get the game, and then on top of that you fork over another 20 or 30 for a battle pass, and then a lot of the times it's the battle pass only lasts for a certain amount of time, and then once that time passes, then it's gone. So it's like you have to get kind of FOMO and like, well, I have to, I already forked over another $30, so I have to invest my time now to get all of out of the battle pass that I want to get.
Yeah.
And I only have a certain amount of time to do that, and it's like the game kind of is forcing you to only focus on it and not anything else in the industry. So it's just like, it's like play our game and don't.
It's predatory, 100%.
Right. Yeah.
And when you feel like a mark, it's never a good experience.
Yeah, when it becomes like a job almost to kind of like, oh, I gotta jump back on, Call of Duty because I've got that battle pass and it's only gonna last another, couple weeks and I'm only halfway through it, so I gotta grind out some matches, because then once it's gone, and it's like I'm gonna get that money back, or I'm not just gonna automatically unlock whatever I'm missing. So.
How about you, Chris? What's been the most detrimental live service you've ever seen or experienced personally?
I this NBA 2K count, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
So I guess that has to be number one for me. I've been playing that game since the very beginning. The first one came out, and I thought I'd be a customer for life, and it just got too stupid, and I left.
Yeah, those have a lot of microtransactions, doesn't it?
It does. It has a different type of microtransaction. which we'll get into a little bit later. All right, and then what about you, Chris? Do you have another point?
I think our negative point, like for all of us, is the same thing said slightly different, but it's just the grotesque nature, predatory, whatever words we want to use, of how it just gets more and more competitive to get people's attention, to get their money, and just that kind of fine tuning, which we'll put it like there's a positive spin on it, the fine tuning of how to get our attention and how to get our money. This.
I think we've proven how they can get our money, and it's by creating quality product or quality content. At which point, as long as it's there, we're going to pay for it, and we're going to continue to pay into it.
They tap into these different things, like we brought up. You touched on the potential always beats reality, right? Mm-hmm. And so now,
well, I think fandom at this point always beats reality, or the chase, which I'll get into it from my point. I think there's two designs to how the video game industry has changed, and from my point, it leads into what you're saying.
Okay. Go ahead. Let's hear what that is real quick then.
So for me, my negative or my biggest cultural shift for video games is the designation of how they've decided to look at consumers.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say, sorry to interrupt, but this is what I forgot to say. Okay. That they figured out how much the whale matters.
Correct.
Okay,
right.
But go ahead. So.
And they figured out who the whale is.
Yeah, exactly. And
And then for the longest time, it was how to assess that. But they've figured out that the whale isn't necessarily a single person, but it's a single demographic. So for mine, and it's how they're targeting that. It's the shift in the understanding of how controllable an audience can be through fear and triggerable occurrences within like the psychology essentially, but the real shift came with how they decided to treat what they quoted as retail therapy, where it's discerning for anyone to spend $60, right? It's a conversation everyone has to have. Do I have $60 to spend? Is this $60 going to be invested in something that I'm going to enjoy? And even if it's something you do know you're going to enjoy, for a large portion of us, the simple transaction of spending $60 will always be a stress-inducing environment, right? Mm-hmm. For some people, they have that paradigm where they can just spend money, they don't care. But when you have an industry that has shifted into a completely 100% predatory aspect to how they spend money for advertising, how they develop their games to be intentionally triggering to a specific group of people, and that is children. Loot boxes are 100% designed to get children to spend money uncontrollably, to create spending habits and spending, at this point, it's not even just habits, it's just spending trends that become socially acceptable inside of the gaming industry, but also in real life as well. That's where I feel like the industry has taken a huge radical step in the wrong direction and needs to get rectified in a huge way. And I don't know how we're going to have that without having some sort of censorship or having some sort of real drastic legislation to fix this problem, because we've had massive amounts of studies. This one I'm looking at right here, it's called the Kessler 10, where they stress test people that are spending money. And they found that whenever a person spends, there's a level of stress that is involved with that, right? Because it's a financial transaction. But if you look at just buying a game, okay, it creates a level of stress.
Does it specify buying it with cash or card, or does it do like?
Oh yeah, it goes into all of
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Buying downloadable content creates a little bit of a higher level of stress because you are reinvesting, right? And then other in-game items, which would be considered, visual or cosmetic, something that doesn't necessarily have an advantage for you, but it's something that you kind of want, right? I want Cloud to have that black suit. I want my car to have the red wrap, right? It doesn't give you an advantage, but it's there for you if you wanted to spend the money, but it doesn't, there's no negative to it other than it's just a way for them to gain cash. That has,
it doesn't provide you any benefit.
Yeah, it equally has as little a risk as downloadable content when we're talking about add-ons or expansions and stuff like that. When it comes to loot boxes, there is 3 times as much stress and adverse effects in long term in the average person. There are 8 times more adverse effects in anyone under the age of 16. There are 10 to 15 times more negative effects when in the age of 14 to 8, which is the number one targeted demographic. It is where the highest spending power is because it's the highest pressure point for parents. They're the most impressionable. They're the easiest to create a mob or gang mentality with very little effort. And that's scary. And that's scary to know that they are purposely paying into a system to develop ways to target children and create negative spending habits, pure gambling addiction, and the worst aspects of gambling you're creating inside of a loot box.
Chance, yeah.
Yeah, that scares me. And the fact that it's prevalent in every sports game, it's prevalent in 80% of first-person shooters. It's prevalent on the Amazon game space, on the Android game space, and the iPhone game space. 70% of the top 10,000 games downloaded in the last 10 years are loot box related or randomized gambling gotcha systems.
Yeah, the gotcha.
Yeah. The scariest thing is that they've found a way to package them into games that you wouldn't even think they would. And, it's like a Barbie game. It's a game targeted to girls, for dressing and design. They've been able to package it in just absolutely everything. And then you look at Madden, you look at 2K, you look at all these games that are not getting developed, that have absolutely atrocious game-breaking bugs in them. They have no development cycle. All their marketing is designed for selling loot boxes. And why is that? And that's, to my biggest concerning point, is on, was it this one? I have one right here. Okay, it's right here. At the height of 2020, when loot boxes took off, they were bringing in $15 billion in just pure revenue. It doesn't cost these companies anything, right? There's no development cycle to it on the massive scale, right? You're not developing a game. You're creating a skin that you're then trying to digitally manipulate.
Right.
At the height of COVID, when...
And who's to say that wasn't an asset already at the beginning?
Exactly, right? And that's just a different thing.
Yeah.
But year after year, there's been a 5 to 10% increase in all of this. up until they're projecting in 2025, loot boxes will generate more money than actual game sales potentially. So the actual physical asset for some of these companies will be worth less than the ability to market a gambling aspect to it.
That's why I think a lot of those, like a lot of app game, like where mobile was kind of catching a lot of steam, is because they can, market the game for free. You can download it for free, but then
Yeah.
they'll add a lot of microtransactions and back end stuff. So it's like, yeah, well, we're not going to make money on up front, but we will down the road. Yeah.
And then
That's why, yeah, a game like Final Fantasy 16 kind of doesn't make sense in this environment, right? To release a game like that.
Right.
And if you look at the spending trends of this $20 billion of just pure profit, you have the Asian market is probably the largest, but that's because it's mobile games. They're on the go more as a country. They don't have video game systems as prevalent in this society, but everyone has a cell phone. Even in China, everyone's got a phone, right? Korean, North Korea, they have cell phones. They have access to the internet. They have ways to play mobile games. They don't have computers or TVs. So it's what
That's what makes it so appealing, I think, is because everybody's got one.
And so when you look at a market like that has over 65% of the share, of course it's going to dominate, right? And then if you take North America and you add it with China, which is why we're seeing so many of these companies partnering with Chinese. We have Tencent that's coming in. We have all these other Chinese companies, TN, that are trying to take market share. If you add our two countries together and our two markets, you have almost 90% of the market, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't you try and dominate that? And when you have a game that sells,
get into the space at least.
Yeah. And you have, Madden, right? They just had that championship I watched. I thought I was going to watch people play Madden. Every aspect of that championship was designed to get kids to buy loot boxes. The wording, the way they described the plays, everything about it was trying to hype up the fact that these two people playing against each other had spent over $10,000 to create their ultimate team. Because you got to have the character that has Showstopper. You got to have the character that has Knockout, because that's the only way you can interrupt plays. You got to have the character that's got In the Pocket. Like, it was insane
all the different
listening to the telecast and how specifically they trained and they were told how to speak about the plays that they were developing, right? It didn't sound natural. It wasn't like, oh, look at that hit, it was huge. No, it was, oh, look at Showstopper hit. Because he had Showstopper, he knocked that ball out. Like, it was so designed and targeted to make it just trigger, 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 trigger. And
I gotta have that. Yeah, I gotta get that.
It was overwhelming to me, and I'm never going to spend money on an Ultimate Team on Madden. Like, I would never allow any of my kids to do it. Because to me, it's so aggressive, and it's so just... But that's because I'm a part of it. If I was a parent and I didn't know, and my son was like, hey, I need $20 for Madden. Okay, what are you spending that $20 on? Unless I was just hyper in their lives in a way that where I am just monitoring everything they're doing, which I know a lot of parents are. Madden and all of these games have given children instantaneous access to gambling in a very, very hyper risky way. Because if you went to Vegas and you were betting, you're going to have that one guy, right? He's going to hit black 13, right? Or red 13. He's going to hit it big. He's going to get that gambler's rush. But the majority of people are going to hit the gambler's low. they're gonna crap out. They're gonna lose all their money, right? But the way these loot boxes are designed, it's a game, right? It's flashing lights, it's loud music, it's every streamer you love doing it in front of your face, right? They're all sponsored, it's just everything is just so designed to dismantle a child's ability to not want to do it. That fear of being left out is both cultural.
Right, yeah, the FOMO.
Yeah, it's designed inside of the game because you can't compete, especially in a game like Madden or 2K. I can't go to the park and play with a kid that's going to spend $200 to make his character better, unless
right.
I just want to lose or I just want to get beat down, which then creates a different psychopathy inside of me, because then I don't want to lose, right? Or I have that thought process, well, if we were on equal footing, I would just be better than you and I would win, right? The only reason you can beat me is because you've spent more money.
I've been there.
Right? And then, I'm watching chat scroll while I'm watching this, and everyone in the chat's going, if I had a $10,000 team, I would be winning $250,000.
Mm-hmm.
If I just spent this money, no one was saying, why the hell did they have to spend $10,000 to play in this team, right? Why is top end gatekept by the actual company? And that's insane to me, that we've normalized this situation so much that the government can't sanction it. We have the health department doing everything they can to get it to where children can't have access to it. And ultimately, that's what it's going to have to come down to. Your game is going to have to get rated with gambling, and if it's in it, you can't buy it unless you're 18. You can't buy everything inside of it. And obviously, kids are still going to get access to it. They're still going to be able to buy it. But how do we stop it at this point if we don't just stop it entirely from happening? Counter-Strike 2 came out and in its first month made $900 million on loot boxes. It made, I think the thing I read is it made 9,000% more money on digital loot than it did actual generated revenue inside of the game. Granted, the game came out for free and you were only buying the premium version of it, so it was optional. But even if they had charged the $29, it still would have made, what I read was it still would have made 10 times more money in digital sales of nothing than the actual sale of the game.
It's crazy.
Why develop a game? Why put any time into it?
Yeah, like I was saying, it's just like, why? No, but they don't have to care about the launch. It's all about, just how can we string them along.
And that, to me, is the most damaging thing to the gaming industry right now. And I think if parents really understood, or if more people were talking about it and they weren't allowing these companies to manipulate those conversations by saying, oh, it's not gambling because you always get something back. What a load of shit.
Yeah.
What do you mean I get something back? I get a 67 rated player that I cannot use. I get a skin that's worth 2 cents on a loot box I just spent $15 to open. That's still gambling. Just because there's some level of return doesn't change it. You know what I mean? How did we allow that to be the smallest level of barometer or deterrent to actually allowing these to get sanctioned? Oh, well, they get a skin in return, so it's not gambling. It's like opening a pack of magic cards.
You get mana with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just think
you can build another deck, just not the deck you want to play with.
going into a VR marketplace where if VR takes off and we do have Sword Art Online, or we do have, Ready Player One level of inclusion of media, what do you think's going to be in that game? You're going to walk through a street and you're going to see Dolce & Gabbana ads. You're going to see, ads for clothing, food. Oh, well, is that a McDonald's sign? Well, click on that. McDonald's just gets DoorDash to you immediately. Like, the level of...
They already kind of have something like that, don't they, with Meta? I thought they were trying to do... there was a big push for, like, virtual marketplaces and things like that.
I mean, why doesn't Domino's have a Meta app where you go in and you, like, virtually make the pizza and then it orders it for you?
Yeah.
Imagine how triggering that would be inside of somebody to, like, oh, well, I made this pizza, it looks good, and then it showed up in my house. Like, that would be the most habit-forming, like, situation, right?
Well, it needs to be better than that Burger King thing you sent me.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The Burger King. Hey, you leave my Mastodon.
The monstrosity.
The
I don't know what
Mastodon
that was,
meat alone.
Bring that picture up if you can.
I don't know where it was. It's on my phone somewhere.
Yeah. It just stuck out. Like,
ridiculous.
But that's
but
yeah, no,
I get your point, or I get your point.
Yeah. No,
there's no way to frame it for me where it could be positive. Like,
right.
It is.
Well,
just
hopefully enough of the gamer space, makes enough of an uproar that it kind of breaks that bubble, and it changes the landscape, and hopefully we kind of microtransactions and that kind of gambling things, eventually just hopefully gets unadopted and just is seen as a failing gaming practice.
I think, but the thing that scares me
on the optimistic side,
right? Yeah, when DLC first started becoming really prevalent, right? As gamers, we all said the same thing. Well, if you don't want it, just don't buy it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what did we see? DLC tanked. It was super low sales. They were doing tons of development cycles. DLC was getting canceled because they just weren't selling, right? How many times did we see that during the 360?
Before that, like just Xbox had DLC. Remember?
Yeah.
Original Xbox had DLC that I would say tanked.
Yeah, but I mean, like that, we created that, right? And we're like, okay, that's just how the industry is going to work, right? They're going to find ways to try and upsell, or they're going to add these expansions. Like, and if you don't want it, you don't want it, right? And it's the same thing with cosmetics, right? If it's purely cosmetic and it's just like a single price point, you don't have to buy it. This is not that, right? But somehow they've allowed that pervasive thought process to override the paradigm of everyone to looking at it as it should be, where this isn't just a passive thing, right? It's not just like I can choose not to buy it. It now affects how the game is developed. It affects how the game is played. It affects the people playing it in a negative way. Even the people that don't use it get abused by it. And I think that's where it's just like, this is something else, right? This isn't just, I've got a hunchback. No, this is like a malignant tumor that is taking over your body. This is something entirely different. But there's such a huge portion of people that are just like, well, you don't have to interact with it if you don't want to. Well, if you put it in every game because it's successful to some degree, or it generates more money than the freaking game selling, then I'm gonna have to interact with it. Otherwise, I'm never gonna play a video game.
Right. Yeah, that becomes the industry standard.
And look what it's done to those sports games. I mean, I wouldn't say it's entirely loot box's fault. Well, now it is. But
you see it, in what, Madden, NHL, FIFA. I'm sure FIFA's probably there too, along with Madden. I would assume.
Oh yeah, they're all equal.
Yeah.
Well, maybe NHL's maybe is that which one's the least shitty? Is it NHL?
I would think
No,
NHL
they're
would
all
probably be the
bad.
least. One of
They're
the
all
least.
bad.
They're all bad.
They're all the same at this point.
Yeah, because they're all run
Yeah.
by EA, so it's just
Yeah.
it's the same
Okay.
package. It's the same.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. It's all. That is EA. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
HUT,
same.
it's MUT, it's Ultimate Team, it's FIFA. I think it's Build a Legend or Build a
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
and then God, you have all these games coming out with just ways to monetize those things, and then not just monetize them, but make them random. I mean, if Diablo could have put loot boxes in their game and gotten away with it, they would have done it. They made the worst battle pass on the planet.
Right.
But if they
No,
could,
I really. No, go ahead. Sorry.
but I mean, they did do it with Diablo Immortal, right? I think
Yeah.
that Diablo Immortal was the test run. I think there is a version of Diablo 4 in the world where there are loot boxes in it, and we just don't see it. I think if they data mine for it, they could find it. But Diablo Immortal is like,
Yeah.
that is exactly what it is. There's 37 currencies, there's 8 million different upgradable items, and there's loot boxes left and right. And they have even more hyper-aggressive loot boxes, because to get dungeon rewards after beating a dungeon, you have to loot box into them. It's a key that you unlock, or it's blood, or it's a blood trail or something like that, where you have to spend more money to get access to the loot to be able to complete the game. And it's like, no wonder
Right.
some dudes spend
Yeah, you're gated behind
$100,000. Yeah, that's insane.
Right. Yeah. In order to progress your character, it's like you're pigeonholed into having to.
Every
buy
dungeon
those,
costs you
and it's just-
$1.99.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do the dungeon, but if you want your loot at the end, you got to pay me $2. Like that's the most predatory, like ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
No,
not that's not even beyond like, oh, I can't interact. Like, no, you have to interact with it.
Yeah. No, I'll be surprised. Like, it sucks to say, but I'm kind of counting the days when I see a Diablo 4, a thing on their marketplace that's like, oh, buy this and get 50% more experience for this season or something like that.
I mean, they already did it. That's what the season pass is. The season pass is designed for that, and they said it wasn't going to, but it does. The season pass has experience rewards and things built into it, and
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean-
it's accessible by everybody though. You don't have to purchase it.
that's changing though, isn't it? With season 3 or 4, I thought that they were only doing that at the beginning seasons because they had such a shit outpouring.
Yeah.
They were
Or
like,
maybe, I don't know, maybe season 4, but so far
Okay.
season 3 is like that, where you can just
Give it time.
Get
That's
all
what
this
he's
stuff.
saying.
give it time.
I feel like it's gonna happen. Or there's gonna be a mount that like increases your run speed. Or they're gonna breach their
I
promise.
don't know how that's
feel
not
like.
there yet. Yeah. Huh.
I know. Yeah,
No, well,
that's
it's
what I'm saying.
I thought it was
it's
part of
coming.
the battle pass is faster run speed. Hi, kitty.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
I could have sworn that was one of the things they added with the season 3 battle pass was not only does it give you more blood or experience, it also lets you interact with the world at a faster rate. So essentially, it makes it easier for you to do a bunch of different things, which gives you a slight competitive edge in like the PvP verse. Which, I mean, the PvP in it is already bare minimum.
non-existent. Yeah, I don't think people really take it seriously.
But
I mean, right now they have the event going on with the New Year
hmm
that increases experience and things like that. But that's accessible by everybody so far. So that's one thing. I still feel like they're skirting that line, and they're just waiting for the right time to be just like, oh, and then just drop something, and be like, let's just see what happens.
Well, and I think
Or
that's
see if everybody remembers.
Yeah, I think that's the scary thing is that there's too many companies out there that are willing to take the chance or take the risk. We'll just add it real quick and see what happens. And
Right,
if
yeah,
it's a real
exactly.
negative response, we can just give a half-assed like AI apology.
Apology,
Yeah,
right?
and
Yeah,
we'll remove it. But the fact that it's funny that it's a gambling system that is designed to target children in the worst parts of human nature, and it preys on our fear. It preys on FOMO. It preys on loss of investment. It just it's so many things, but ultimately it's like it's also preys on the company and other companies. If you're struggling to succeed, it must be real hard to not just, let's just add loot boxes to our game. Right? Like, well, I really want to be an ethical company, but I also want to drive that new Tesla truck. So let me just add one loot box, right? Just one loot box this one time. We only sold 3 million copies of Final Fantasy 16. Let me just add this loot box where you can get, cloud skins in it.
yeah,
Let's just see what happens, right?
or add him to the game, like add him as a side quest or something.
We don't have to. We have all the Final Fantasy MMOs, MOBA games, which, on mobile Final Fantasy games, you're buying weapons, armor, loot boxes for skins, loot boxes for upgradable material. Like they've already done it. It just hasn't. Yeah, it's just not super successful for them because they unfortunately have spent so long being successful or being a good company in other areas that it looks more pathetic to them.
This new one might succeed. We'll see. The Ever Crisis one, that one came out not that long ago. But the other ones, I don't know. I can't speak on how successful they are.
Yeah, I know Record Keepers hung on for years.
Longer than it should have.
Yeah.
Because that thing was predatory as hell.
Mm-hmm.
I think you.
First Soldier's gone. First Soldier's closed.
Mm-hmm.
That one.
First came and went real fast. Yeah.
But I mean, like,
it's Brave crazy. XVS is sticking around.
Is it?
That's old. That game is freaking crazy old too. Yeah.
Mm.
Maybe because it is that old. People have so much invested into it, they don't want to leave.
Yeah, that's another one they're waiting for an end.
We can't afford to let this one go.
Yeah.
We're just gonna go with it, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, being optimistic. Hopefully there's enough backlash from the gaming community that kind of makes them second guess, and maybe there's a big exodus of like maybe the next Call of Duty is going to really fail, because I want to say
I'm still waiting for
Warfare
that.
3 didn't sell very well.
Oh really? It finally.
I feel like it hasn't.
Cracking the armor. Okay.
No.
Yeah, I feel like it didn't.
You are misinformed, sir.
But no, really?
Yeah.
Did it sell?
It did really well. Even with a 3-hour campaign, it did better than it should have.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Unfortunate. Well, hopefully Call of Duty 4, people figure it out. There's just a reskin on top of reskin.
How many times can we rename the game the same thing?
Yeah.
Modern Warfare 1, 2, and 3 have already come out, and this is the same game. Or not? Well, it is the same game, right?
Yes.
It'll be retro warfare or future warfare.
It's Modern Warfare 3 2.
Yeah, I mean, it sold so good, dude. Advanced Warfare was one of the worst selling recent Call of Duty titles. That's because of the movement, but I mean, yeah, no, Call of Duty sells better than it should. If that's the one you're waiting for to fail, then we're in a shit show, because I don't know if that one will. It's too ingrained.
No.
Well, and I think that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
Is we need gamers to step up, or we need, as a community to take a stand. We can't.
Yeah, or indie developers to really take hold and shift the dynamic.
Yeah. We just need.
And then just
we need
a lot
Larry
of games to.
Game, apparently.
Yeah. And getting single player games to kind of take prevalence again. You know, really strong single player, just
Yeah,
solid games to kind of come out and
that would be
have
nice.
people not have to rely on games to kind of perpetuate
Yeah.
and be strung along. And kind of remind people that, hey, we can still be profitable with a game that has an end.
Yeah.
Go back to our roots.
Do you guys think that what they're doing with Final Fantasy VII is kind of like the Fortnite thing? They're trying to create like a Square Enix like meta universe with Seven, where it's
They
just like
might
this
be.
continuously like infinite
All
thing.
profitable engine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, they're re-releasing Advent Children in theaters.
Because this game is
Um,
saying that there's going to be a bunch of split timelines, and so that's an infinite storyline right there.
right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Essentially. Yeah. Depending on how and it all kind of hinges how this trilogy is going to end.
Yeah.
Is it going to be wrapped up and be done, or is it going to lend itself to like a spawning of other games?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what they're going to have the whole restructuring talk about. It's like, hey, we what's
No,
next
seriously, the
after
restructuring
this
thing.
remake?
I thought it would be. They have so many characters, right? Why don't they do a Fortnite thing and have a Fortnite world with all the characters that Square Enix has? They have plenty of people
Mm-hmm.
to make a persistent world. I don't know. There's no term for it yet that I know of.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Metaverse.
Well, they tried Dissidia.
Metaverse.
That
Okay.
didn't hit
Yeah,
very well.
they did Dissidia and it did not succeed. They did World of Final Fantasy,
Yeah.
but then they chibied it up and it didn't do very well.
They did do Dissidia. You're right.
Yeah.
I don't know. The first ones did okay, but right on PSP.
Well,
Yeah.
Dissidia got
Yeah,
really.
because I mean, it was a cool idea, and I think that was kind of lended itself to all the interest initially, but then the subsequent releases have just been kind of, I don't know. It's a very awkward fighting game.
It's awkward,
yeah, no,
and then it's just like.
I haven't seen those mechanics since. I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's why that's like it's interesting that it's a unique fighting game, but I think it's a little too unique for its own good. Where it's like it's not familiar to it, because I mean a lot of the fighting games, somebody that's has played one can kind of translate a lot of their skills over to the others, but this one is just like it's in a league of its own.
Yeah, I mean
which I think hurts it more than helps it, or more than sets it apart.
I mean, it's got a space because fighting games are in a real shit spot right now.
No, they're on the
I mean, if they re-released like Guys, I mean that would be awesome.
Oh my god. No, Street Fighter 6 is doing well. Tekken 8 came out. I think it's in a resurgence. I think it's a really good spot fighting game.
You think Street Fighter 6 is doing well?
Well,
yes.
No, it is. It is doing good.
Is
Street Fighter 6 is doing well. So and Tekken 8, I mean, I guess that's what the best that Square could hope for is just to release their IP, their properties to different companies. Because I mean, they had Noctis as a character, so everybody's just assuming that they'll have maybe Tifa as a character. So we'll see.
Alright, do you have another point? Or did that just sort of encompass what we were all feeling about where that was going?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just hopefully an industry shift. I mean, it just sucks that it's kind of ended, or it's gone where it's gone, and yeah, hopefully there's more of an emphasis on a more complete package title.
Yeah.
And hopefully, developers can, I mean, have more passion, and be, more emphasis on the single player. No more games as a service.
Yeah, that would be nice. Or I mean, the games as a service thing doesn't bother me, as long as it's not predatory.
There's right, yeah.
like the games is, an MMO charging monthly because they were doing server space, right, which had to at the top time had to be accounted for.
Right.
Or cause,
the overhead with that.
They were constantly, involved in the game daily, right?
Right.
It's when it becomes predatory, I think, is when the issue comes in. When you have to pay a monthly subscription, then you have to have a Game Pass, then you have to have loot boxes, right? It's like you got to pick.
Right.
One.
Yeah. On top of that,
you got to pick
right,
a lane and stick with it. If you're just gonna do DLC, just do DLC. If you're gonna do a Game Pass, then there shouldn't be $8,000 worth of skins as well, right? Or even with a Game Pass, right? If you have a Game Pass, those skins have to be available to everyone, even if they don't take part in the Game Pass. Because the simple act of saying this will go away forever creates such an unhealthy precedent that just causes people to do stupid things, or it's bad. Like I think anything that can be targeted as predatory needs to be heavily regulated or heavily
something that's going to monopolize your time that much,
right?
Yeah. Or being marketed as monopolizing that much time.
Remember that one Xbox game? It had an achievement where you had to buy the game, play it, and then log in 5 years later.
No, I don't remember that.
Well, they changed it. But
okay.
But one of the achievements was you had to play it, and then you had to play it for 10,000 hours, and then you had to log in. 3 years later, it was some really stupid.
Wow.
Okay.
Something ridiculous.
Yeah, it might have been on a Gears game or something like that. I just remember it being so people were like, "What the hell?" And then some people were factory resetting their Xbox and changing the listed date. Yeah, and don't connect it to the internet because then it'll change. It's just come. The extents we go to cheat things is ridiculous sometimes.
Yeah.
Any other things you wanted to bring up, Tim?
No, that's it.
All right, so I got one final one, and it's not necessarily this state of gaming, but more state of the world to an extent. But,
I was gonna do state of the world, but you do it first.
Okay. How are you guys feeling with how games are trying to tackle social issues, with dealing with, inclusivity,
The diversity and stuff.
Diversity is a big one, but
yeah,
should we not buy Blizzard games because they were a terrible company for 5 years? Should no one buy a Harry Potter game because J.K. Rowling has said some extremely damaging things? What's the stance that a video game should take? Should we just have it be where video games don't have any say in any of that? We should just detach ourselves from everything? Where do you feel like the line is too close or too far, or do you think there is no line?
I'd say that video games are just like people. Just like we're walking contradictions, they will be that too. Sometimes they'll make a stand, sometimes they won't, sometimes they'll overlap, sometimes it should or shouldn't do anything. It's just going to do what it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or just kind of taken for what it is. It's like saying, kind of comparing it to, listening to Michael Jackson's music. Would you still listen to his music based on all the stuff that's kind of come out with him? And
we all have a particular moral compass, and we we do
Right.
this and we don't do this, and we think it makes sense, and but who in the end is the person that what is what does make sense? Who's the gatekeeper of that at the end?
Mm-hmm.
What
Yeah, it's kind of.
so should is interesting. Are you asking more like what will they do or what should they do? It's two different things. What should they do is just like us. You just live life through your worldview. That's
Do
what
you
you
think
do.
video games need to be more inclusive? Do you think that if they weren't inclusive, it's a negative, or do you think if they are being inclusive, it's a negative? Right? Is it pandering to do these things? Um, you know, like the Harry Potter game, they added a trans character. Do you think they had to do that to appease?
I think they're okay for that.
And do you think
I
it's
think
wrong for us to have those expectations of a video game company?
I think when these conversations come up, we use these terminologies in like a neutral stance of inclusion and not, and just like this is and this isn't. And I don't think that's set in stone when people think it is.
Yeah.
And I think if we know that they just did that as like as a response to the backlash that they were getting, that it's just disingenuous.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't think that'd be right of them to do, but yeah, I mean, you kind of have to take it on a case by case basis, I would think. Kind of the more information that you can glean from it,
Yeah.
would kind of help you kind of take determine what stance you'd take on it.
Do you think
And then yeah, like Chris was saying, how that affects your moral compass. What was that?
I said, do you think politics should be being, personal politics of any nature, not necessarily fully political, but beliefs and everything? Do you think that should be inserted into video games, or do you think it should just be?
Do you think they weren't there before?
I think they were there before. I just think it's a hyper focused.
Okay. Right. Yeah, maybe that's been pushed to
at the moment, where originally it was there and it just didn't existed. But now it's it's something that has to be a part of everything, or like.
Okay, yeah. I mean, when a human creates something, it's going to have politics in it, right? Because it's a representation of themselves to some degree, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, however their upbringing.
But now, I think I get what you're saying. Now it's just like the video game industry just kind of laid under the radar for a while, and now it's seen as like a tool that can swing power, right?
Yeah, it's seen as like an art form. It's seen as a powerful, inducer of ideology and thought. So it's not just dumb kids play this and we don't have to pay attention to it anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like now, should we hold that against them?
I just find the should is an interesting premise. I don't know. I don't.
Have you been influenced not to buy a game based off of things the company has done or things the game represents?
Okay. Does that count again or no?
For what? Or for 2K? I mean, I guess it would count. But was your reasoning behind that because of like a political or social view that arose beyond the fact that it's just a terrible game?
Yeah, I don't know if it was a political view. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm talking.
Oh, you mean like a worldview of like.
Yeah, like they tried to politically charge or socially charge something, and push a specific narrative or push something that took away from the product to some degree, or you felt like you didn't want to support, someone that comes out and said something stupid or did something.
I mean, thinking back to the '90s with Mortal Kombat, I mean, the whole traction that it got with violence and stuff. I mean, that made me want to play it more. if if you want to look at it from that perspective, but
There hasn't been that many things, I didn't buy
right.
Hogwarts Legacy, I think it was called, right?
Yeah, Hogwarts Legacy.
But I remember we had a conversation about it, and I don't know if you remember that conversation, but I was less bothered about that whole thing than you were, from what I remember.
I was for Hogwarts Legacy. I was on both camps, so I'm sure out there I'm gonna annoy someone on one side to the other. My thing is, if you try and stop people from experiencing something, you can create as many enemies as you can allies, right? But more importantly, if you try to dictate how someone comes to understanding on something, you're more likely to push them away from the narrative you're trying to control. So if you're trying to get allies in the fight for trans rights, telling people not to buy something because, or even worse, it wasn't just don't buy it. There's a real war against J.K. Rowling's fandom, where if you even like Harry Potter, like, you're a piece of shit, right? Like, you should just hate everything about Harry Potter now. You should not support her. You should, just let any love you have for the series die, because she's the turf queen, I think is what they're calling her now. Like, she's saying and she's doing insanely damaging things, and I can't deny that. So it's, for me, it was a question of like, does supporting her, did she actively have a message in that game where she was, perpetuating more hate? And so that's where the moral dilemma for that came, right? And I even had the same dilemma with Diablo 4, where a woman took her life because of what they were doing to her at that company. That was very startling to me, and I definitely had a moment where I could see myself never buying that game or never supporting a Blizzard product or company because of that situation. And then there's also the part of me that goes, well, was it Blizzard, or was it a group of people, right, inside of Blizzard that are doing something that the company doesn't really stand for, doesn't really. So there's always just like, there's always the two sides to it.
Yeah, I think I know kind of what you're trying to get at with this question. I think or at least one of the things you're saying. I don't know, like, how political you want to get on this stream, because it's like, it's supposed to be datum gaming, but now we're getting into like I'm just curious on, like, are you okay?
This is
like.
This is supposed to be about anything. This is supposed to be about the world, about life. About,
all right. Well, I think
we had a very in-depth conversation about the existence and creation and evil and like.
One of the aspects I think you're bringing up is when you have this set amount of inertia in whatever industry it is, right? And so with that inertia comes a way to make profit, right? And so the way it kind of stifles diversity, because if you try to do something diverse, it won't make money, and then it goes, oh, look, it was a failure because of what, maybe not because, or just because of that inertia aspect, because the idea of the industry is to make money. And so, like, it's like it's where, like you said, we're kind of stagnant in the world in general because of how things are profit based. So you can't quite get the diversity. If it was just, I guess what I'm saying is, like, if you had the gaming industry wasn't based on money, and you just have people just creating all kinds of stuff, you just have a ton of different ideas out there, a ton of different diversity, and different ways to experience things.
Yeah.
And So I think that's like one of the aspects you're bringing up, right?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the things. It's, it's more as a gamer.
And this
how much
political
do we?
push
How much are we allowing that to affect us?
It's trying to break that wall. The political
Right.
push, I guess, is trying to break that wall of like when something fails, someone will be like, "See, look, nobody wants to see this type of character, right?" You know,
Mm-hmm.
because it didn't make
Right,
enough
yeah.
money.
Or
And,
yeah, they pin
maybe
that on.
it didn't make enough money, so it's a failure. But that is bound to infinitely be a failure in the current kind of structure.
I think there's also a portion where it's like, let video games be video games because they're supposed to distract us from those moments, right? Or like,
Right.
I don't want politics, or I don't want any of these things to be a part of video games because I use this to distract me from all the other bullshit in life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there's other people.
That's prevalently my take on it.
Yeah.
Because I just want to, escape.
Yeah.
And
I don't know.
while I welcome all that stuff into it, I just kind of take that into.
I don't think you ever escape it though, right? Like I think.
Yeah, especially
Music, movies,
especially lately.
everything's political. It's just I feel like it's like a genie came out of the bottle. We're all self-aware that everything is political. We just thought it wasn't, but it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
It's more thrust. Yeah, it's more in your face now, more than ever.
Well, just because it's just like you just have this.
Right.
You just know. You're like, wow, is this trying to make me vote this way, or is this trying to like, is this woke? Is this not? Is this like,
Like what's the underlying message? Yeah.
You literally like slightly question yourself with everything with that now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can. Do you guys escape when you play video games? You literally don't never think about that?
Some games. Well, and that's the thing, right? I play video games because they are 100% a form of art, but there's different types of art, right?
Right.
There's serene tranquility. There's horrifying, introspective, emotional trauma. I play all different games for different reasons. So maybe there is a point where I would play a game to experience a inclusive part of life that I wouldn't necessarily have access to. If there was a game that had a trans main character and it was focused around their life to some degree, that was made in a way that was, to the trans community deemed. And then that's where I think where my question more comes. Like, so let's say that game did come out, right, where the main character was trans, and the trans community, half of them said that it's insulting, the other half of them said, well, at least I'm represented, right? Is that how we move the conversation forward, or is that how we continue to progress, or is that just it was just token, like, or it was just, where does the line get drawn?
Maybe progression is in the point where they're not worried about being represented or not.
See,
that's like, is that
right? Well, and I'm a writer, right? When I write a character, I write the character as it speaks to me. So if the character was to come out, gay, trans, that's how the character would be. I've never written a character with a political or agenda behind it where I felt like it didn't fit or it needed to fit, or like, I think if you went into something where you had that frame of mind to start, it poisons any life the character could have because it's artificial. Right, because you're explaining.
That's interesting. They're all artificial. They're created.
They are, but they have a life. Like characters, you can't tell me Joel's not a living being now. Like, he's a character inside of a game, but how he has affected people is real, right? Like and that's the difference between, I mean, Mario is real to people, Mickey's real to people. Like, these characters are a part of people's lives in massive ways.
Yeah. Maybe enough just to get, to start a conversation between both sides, a constructive conversation where, one side can learn something positive and sorry, but like both sides can.
I think that's the problem right now, is that neither side can have a positive conversation about it, because it's such a hard thing to talk about. So it's just like, I think companies just don't even, they're not even willing to go there, right?
Well, in the past, companies are, they're still profit driven, and if you're profit driven, then you don't touch landmines like that.
Yeah.
But there's a new kind of economy now where if you do touch the landmine, you get these loyal customers, and it's become a tactic for a variety of people.
Right, and then so you have a game like Pal World that comes out where, because in the context of what it gets compared to, which is Pokemon, right? Pokemon is literally the cleanest of the clean, right? It is just pristine. You can give it to a 2-year-old child and you feel like they're safe. But then you have
yeah.
Then you have Pal World, who presents the same exact world, but they added guns to it.
Yeah.
But like, you can because you can kill your Pokemon, right, and harvest them for meat. It just puts such a separate level of connotation to it, that why wouldn't Pokemon be seen as slaves in the Pokemon world, but Pal World monsters are seen as slaves? Because even though in the context of how they're being utilized, in both games they're utilized the same way, but in Pal World, people make the correlation that it's slavery, but in Pokemon,
they're stuck in a ball,
right?
But you don't
they're
think
trapped,
about it.
Right? Yeah, it's not.
That's a good
It's
point.
not subtle with its slavery. It kind of puts it on display. Yeah, it's unapologetic with its show of slavery.
But I mean, like, that's just like that's just one aspect of one game, right? And then now it's just like a meme upon itself, which I think is almost damaging to that entire thing, because now like people are joking about slavery, and we should never be joking about slavery, especially since there's more slaves in the world today than there's ever been, in the history of the world. It's still an issue that needs to be affected. So it's like, that's where it's just like, was that intentional, or is that just a byproduct of what it was being?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it goes back to something you said about how you hurt your cause when you're being too obvious about, I guess, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because people don't like being herded along, right? They like, I have freedom of choice, I have freedom of thought, and I have like autonomy, and you can't tell me what to do or what to think, right? And I guess maybe what we're saying is that people were more subtle than they are now about their agendas, and it could just be frustration built up over time because the subtlety didn't get enough progress, and there needs to be more faster, and so we have to push harder. That's kind of maybe what I guess we would say the left is doing, and the right is now pushing harder because they're pushing farther that way. They're pushing farther their way, and then we have this tension that leads to breakdown in communication.
But
neither side's willing to kind of come together and compromise and have a constructive discussion, or like that isn't doesn't devolve into well, you're too this or you're too that,
I think we're if you look at society as like as a conversation, we are in the yelling part of the conversation, and after the yelling part comes the resolution, and this yelling part could take many more years. I don't know, but we're in the yelling part right now.
It's a good way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Neither side is
But
of
eventually
backing
we'll
down.
stop. The good news is eventually we'll stop yelling. I don't know when, but
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I hope that we will.
This is where, yeah, when-
you can't yell forever.
right, yeah,
We would hope.
yeah. Well, we're gonna find out at the end of the year.
No, I don't think I think it. I don't know. Are you talking about the election?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think either way, the yelling continues right now. Yeah, I don't think either one stops the yelling, but yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I guess it'll just be who
but
yells louder at the end of the year.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. Ultimately,
All right.
yeah. But back to gaming. You gotta kind of just I don't know. I just try to take gaming as what it is, just an art form, and just try to examine it for what it is, and try to leave any outside influence on it to a minimum, and just try to take it as what it is and experience it.
I think just to sum up the bigger picture point I had was that all this conversation and probably many other conversations we'll have about right and wrong, should we do this, what's going on, and stuff like that. Boundaries, they're always being pushed. It's who we are. It's how human beings came to be. It's just that friction created evolution, and it's just the primordial soup of what we are is just pushing boundaries. And so like all the negatives you see, all the negatives you see, the fine tuning, the predatory, are just some kind of boundary being pushed for whatever's next. It's fine tuning our decision making for what's next. And I feel like it takes resistance or backlash to create the friction to give purpose to progress. There has to be resistance to have progress, and so that's the point of us.
Yeah.
Saying no, don't do this, and then it makes someone go, yes, I do want to do this, and then that's that infinite cycle. And I think we are becoming something other than what we've been. Something other than human. I think we're like slowly becoming something else, and it's uncomfortable for us. And it's not right or wrong. It just is what it is. It's just that pushing boundaries is just, for some reason, that's what the universe does.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's ever expanding.
Yeah. We weathered a lot of storms.
All right, guys.
It's just another thing we gotta weather.
That's going to be it for this episode as we delve into the ever-increasing conversation of video games and humanity and how they correlate and they represent each other so often, so easily. Any final words? Comments?
Get some sleep. You look tired.
Well, you
And
guys
feed the cat.
You guys didn't have power for a while, so unfortunately,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know us, not you. It's usually your place has all the shit going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't a storm in Florida that shut off the power. It was in California. Thanks for watching. Drop a like, subscribe. Most importantly, do something kind for somebody else in the world. Deuces.
See you later.